Okay, so our first book that we're going to look at today is called A Drop of Water. Let's use our strategy of preview, skim, and scan. So we're looking at, we have these pictures. I'm going to move myself up here. So if you look at this picture, you see a very dramatic picture of the water falling on a hard surface, and that little splash that, if you look right here, it goes from the one drop to this amazing, like very sculptural image of that splash. And if we look at this pen, this is like a magnified view. He actually shows you the actual size down here. So like if this was like a pen that you use for sewing, it shows you that's how big it is. But this, when you magnify it, look at all those teeny little drops on top of the head of a pen. So I'm going to read this page. Listen to his voice. We're going to use the words formal and informal. So formal means that he would be, you would read it kind of in a serious tone of voice, that it's supposed to be presenting facts, like as facts. He's not using humor. He's not using any kind of, it's going to sound very academic, like something like a teacher kind of voice, if you think about it like that. Or is it informal? So an informal voice would be playful. They would be using humor. You would kind of chuckle to yourself and go, that's so silly. So you might have some hyperbole in there where you're exaggerating something and making it seem extraordinary or extra silly. Okay, so listen to his voice. Formal or informal? Water's smallest parts. A drop of water falls through the air. Down it splashes, breaking apart into tiny droplets. What would you see if you could break water into even smaller bits? No matter how closely you look, you can't see water's tiniest parts. Like every other substance in the world, water is made of very tiny particles called molecules. On the pen above, the smallest droplet contains more than 300 trillion water molecules. Water's elastic surface. So now you see that heading, if we think about those text features, and we've got that strong visual of the drop of water coming out of the faucet and the drop of water landing on a little puddle of water, a little pool of water. Okay. And elastic is something that's stretchy. So if I'm activating my prior knowledge, I think about what I know about elastic, like my socks. I can pull them, I can stretch them apart, but if I let them go, they snap back together. So I wonder how water can be kind of like a sock.
Staff, please pardon this disruption. Again, please.
All right, so water's elastic surface. Step by step, a camera reveals the curious changing shape of a drop of water as it falls from a spout. The drop grows heavy and begins to fall. As it breaks from a strand of water, the drop shrinks itself into a round ball or a sphere. Okay, so I'm looking at the visual. I see that. I see how it's like connected, and that little connection's like almost like minimal right there at the screen. I'm pointing like y'all can see that, but I'm hoping you're looking at the text. Okay, then the drop flattens and elongates as it falls. Look at that. I can see it. Elongates means instead of being round like a ball, it's kind of flat. That's so cool. The drop flattens and then elongates as it falls. The strand, meanwhile, breaks into tiny droplets. I can see that too. The impact of the drops hitting the water causes a new strand to bounce back out as another drop breaks away. I can see that in the picture too. Because the water molecules cling to each other like tiny magnets, a drop of water can stay in one piece even as it falls through the air. But the molecules at the water's surface cling with a force that causes the surface to shrink. This force is called surface tension. And this makes me have a connection because I've seen those insects that can walk on water, and they do that because they don't break the surface tension. I've read about this before. When the surface of a drop of water shrinks to its smallest size, the drop forms a sphere. The sphere stretches because of the drop's weight and motion, but the surface tension helps keep the drop together as if it were held by an elastic skin. Okay, so back to my first question. Formal or informal? Hopefully you said formal. This book has a serious or formal tone. We're getting lots of factual information right away. We see these very technical pictures on this page, and the pictures match right along with what Walter Wick is telling you in the text. And so as I'm reading a sentence, I can connect that sentence to a picture, and that's helping me visualize all of these facts about how water sticks together. Okay, let's look at a few more pages. So on this page, we would have floating steel and wild waves. Look at that. There's a pin floating on the water. When water meets air, when water flows up. Soap bubbles. Ooh, look at those bubbles. Very cool. Molecules in motion. So one thing you might notice is that I'm just kind of skimming the headings and I'm just looking through. This type of text, I don't have to read every single page in order. I can read each section separately. So I can think about main idea and details. This will be a very descriptive passage if I'm looking at text structure. I'm seeing in this book, they're not boldface words, but I'm seeing these words that are in italics. So there may be a glossary at the end of this book. Ooh, I'm going to let this picture load. I always love this picture. Look at that. This is one of the first times that we've seen a lot of color in this book. All of his pictures are very neutral as far as color palette, like lots of blues, grays, blacks, and whites, which are kind of all the colors I would use if I were thinking about water. Oh, look at all the different kinds. Now I'm seeing a little bit of green because we're outside in nature. Water cycle, definitely something that we learn about in science. Oh, and then on this back page, we've got our experiments that they told us about at the front. All right, so the purpose of this text is to share information with readers through photographs, and it shares a wealth of information about something as simple as a drop of water. When I think about water, I don't think, ooh, water. It's just like water. But in this book, I'm like, ooh, water. The voice of this book reflects simplicity and an appreciation for natural phenomenon. All right, let's look at how another author uses their voice. So click on the next picture of the book. Like we're going to click on the picture of if you decide to go to the moon book. I'll do that in a separate video. So click on that book, and then you can hear about author's voice in that book.